You have a phone full of photos you will never post. Sunsets, meals, a moment with someone you love, images that meant something when you took them. But the idea of putting them online, of making them visible, shareable, permanent, produces something in you that is hard to name. Not quite fear, not quite indifference, something in between, a quiet but firm resistance that you have probably never fully explained even to yourself. Most people around you post without thinking. They share their face, their location, their Sunday morning, their new haircut, and you watch them do it from a distance, wondering why it feels so effortless for them and so impossible for you. You have told yourself it is a privacy thing, or that you just do not care about social media, or that you are too busy. But the real answer is far stranger and far more revealing about the architecture of your mind than you probably realize. The psychology of people who do not post their photos online is not a story about shyness. It is a story about identity, threat perception, autonomy, and a specific relationship with the self that researchers are only beginning to fully understand. And once you see it, you will not be able to unsee it in yourself or in the people around you. Start with the most fundamental question. Why do people post photos at all? The answer at the neurological level is surprisingly simple. Self-disclosure, sharing information about yourself with others, activates the mesolimbic dopamine system, the same reward circuit triggered by food, sex, and money. A 2012 study by Diana Tamir and Jason Mitchell at Harvard University found that people chose to talk about themselves even when offered financial incentives to discuss other topics instead. The brain treats self-disclosure as intrinsically rewarding. Posting a photo is not just communication. For most people, it is a neurochemical event. But here is what makes that finding interesting. Not everyone experiences that reward equally. And for a significant portion of the population, the reward of self-disclosure is either absent, weak, or actively overridden by a competing signal that feels much more powerful. That competing signal is threat. Psychologist Michael Darr and researchers studying what is known as the private self-consciousness construct have identified a distinct personality dimension characterized by heightened awareness of one's own internal states, thoughts, feelings, values, and identity. People high in private self-consciousness are acutely aware of who they are on the inside and are unusually sensitive to the gap between their inner self and the version of themselves that others see. For these individuals, posting a photo is not just sharing an image. It is an act of identity exposure. And identity exposure, for a brain wired this way, registers as a form of vulnerability. This is not the same as low self-esteem. Research consistently shows that many people who avoid posting photos have high levels of self-regard. What they have more specifically is a strong investment in the authenticity of their self-presentation. They are not afraid of being seen. They are afraid of being seen incorrectly. The curated, compressed, permanently archived version of themselves that a social media photo creates feels fundamentally dishonest, a reduction of something complex into something flat, and their nervous system rejects that reduction at a level that bypasses rational thought. There is also a control dimension that researchers have identified. Psychologist Julian Rotter's concept of locus of control, the degree to which a person believes they control the outcomes in their life, maps unusually well onto social media posting behavior. People with a strong internal locus of control who believe that what happens to them is primarily determined by their own actions rather than external forces tend to be deeply uncomfortable with the idea of losing control over their own image. Once a photo is posted, it belongs to a system you cannot fully manage. It can be screenshotted, shared, miscontextualized, archived, and used in ways you never intended. For a brain with a strong internal locus of control, this represents an intolerable surrender of agency. The discomfort is not paranoia. It is the predictable response of a specific kind of mind encountering a specific kind of threat. Then there is the audience problem. When you post a photo, you are not posting it for one person. You are posting it for a composite, invisible audience made up of everyone who might possibly see it: your colleagues, your family, your exes, strangers, future versions of people you have not met yet. Social psychologist Irving Goffman described this as audience collapse, the flattening of multiple distinct social contexts into one undifferentiated public space. In ordinary life, you present yourself differently to different people. You have a work self, a home self, a self that only comes out with your closest friends. Social media destroys those boundaries. For most people, this collapse is merely inconvenient. For people with a highly differentiated sense of self, people who genuinely inhabit different versions of themselves in different contexts, audience collapse is not inconvenient. It is a kind of psychological violence. Posting a single photo that your boss, your mother, and your childhood friend can all see simultaneously creates a self-presentation crisis that their brain cannot resolve, so it refuses to engage at all. Neuroscience adds another layer. Research on the default mode network, the region of the brain most active during self-reflection and identity construction, shows that people who engage in high levels of internal self-processing are more likely to experience external self-presentation as disruptive rather than rewarding. Their sense of self is primarily constructed inward through reflection, memory, and private experience. It does not need external validation to feel real. When you already have a rich, stable, internally maintained sense of who you are, the external affirmation of a like or a comment offers very little that you do not already possess. The reward simply is not there. The cost, on the other hand, the exposure, the loss of control, the flattening, is very much there. There is also what researchers call self-monitoring, a construct developed by psychologist Mark Snyder at the University of Minnesota. High self-monitors are constantly calibrating their behavior to match the expectations of whoever they are with. They are socially flexible, impression conscious, and generally comfortable performing different versions of themselves for different audiences. Low self-monitors, by contrast, behave consistently regardless of who is watching. They are guided primarily by their internal values and sense of identity rather than external cues. Low self-monitors find social media posting deeply uncomfortable because it requires sustained self-performance, a kind of ongoing theatrical display of the self that feels fundamentally at odds with who they are. And there is one more dimension that rarely gets discussed. Some people who do not post photos are not protecting themselves from others. They are protecting their experiences from themselves. Psychologist Kristen Deal at the University of Southern California led research showing that taking photos, and especially sharing them, can actually reduce the enjoyment of an experience as it is happening. The act of framing, capturing, and presenting a moment pulls you out of the moment itself. For people who are highly present-oriented, who experience life most fully when they are fully immersed rather than partially documenting, posting feels like a tax on living. Every photo shared is a moment partially unlived. Their silence online is not withdrawal, it is protection of something they value more than visibility. So what does all of this add up to? The person who never posts their photos is not hiding. Not necessarily. They are not depressed, not antisocial, not technophobic, not ashamed. What they are, in most cases, is a specific kind of thinker. Inward-oriented, autonomy-driven, identity-protective, and present-focused. They live more of their life in private, not because the world is dangerous, but because their inner world is rich enough that it does not need the internet's amplification to feel real. The philosopher Blaise Pascal wrote, centuries before social media existed, that all of humanity's problems stem from the inability to sit quietly in a room alone. He was describing something the non-posters understand intuitively. The self does not require an audience to exist. The moment does not require a caption to matter. The life does not require documentation to be lived. You have a phone full of photos you will never post. And somewhere, quietly, that is the most honest thing about you.